A young woman had just opened the door when a towering man, nearly 2 meters tall, grabbed her by the neck. He forcefully dragged her into the house. Terrified, the woman begged for mercy, claiming she was pregnant. But this only seemed to fuel his sadistic pleasure. He ruthlessly tortured her, leaving her bruised and battered. Then, he delivered a heavy blow to her abdomen. The brutal assault continued until the police arrived. It was only then that he stopped. By the time they reached the scene, the woman was already dead, facing the officers' drawn guns. The man calmly raised his hands and surrendered, even flashing a chilling smile. Moments later, another officer stormed in, the woman's husband. Seeing his wife lying in a pool of blood, he was consumed with grief, overwhelmed with rage. He drew his gun and pointed it at the man's forehead. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, his colleagues quickly intervened, pleading with him not to act impulsively. Gritting his teeth, he glared at the man before him, the very same criminal he had personally arrested 6 months ago. How could this man be out of prison now, and worse, seeking revenge, though he wanted nothing more than to end him? He wrestled with his emotions and chose to believe in the law, but the law let him down. The man not only avoided the death penalty, but he also seemed to thrive in prison. Enraged and disillusioned, the officer finally snapped. He loaded his gun, stormed into one of the man's gang hideouts, and began shooting. One of the gang members tried to ambush him. One gang member tried to attack him, but was taken down with a single shot. Another clean headshot followed. Afterward, he called his colleagues, confessing to the crime and surrendering himself. But this was only the first step of his revenge plan. Soon enough, he was sent to prison as he had hoped, the very same prison where the man who ruined his life, Deschio, was being held. However, to his surprise, Deschio wasn't intimidated by his arrival. In fact, he greeted him with a warning. "Let's get one thing straight. This is my house." Sure enough, as Deschio promised. Later that afternoon, several inmates attacked him. Fortunately, he was quick on his feet, and dodged their strikes. Ripping his shirt into makeshift defenses, he managed to fend off their knives. He skillfully countered, and took down a few of them. But one man against many was too much. From all sides, they overpowered him. One inmate pinned him down, while others unleashed a brutal beating. Helpless, he fell to the ground. Just as he was losing all strength to fight, one of the attackers grabbed a knife from the floor. It looked like he was about to be killed. Suddenly, a prison guard appeared. The intervention saved his life. Still in shock, he realized how powerful Deschio's influence in the prison was. Later, while catching his breath, the same guard told him a secret. When Deschio first arrived, he struck a deal with the warden. The warden and Deschio secretly profited from a flower business. Deschio ensured the warden's interests were protected. In return, the warden allowed Deschio to reign over the prison, making him the king among the prisoners. However, hearing all of this didn't deter Changgu. He was determined to avenge his wife, even if it cost him his life. That night, back in his cell, Changgu began putting his revenge plan into motion. He took a ballpoint pen from under his bed, unscrewed the cap, and discarded the ink refill. He sharpened the pen's casing, turning it into a makeshift knife. Then, he headed to the shower room, where he found one of Deschio's underlings. He plunged the makeshift knife into the man's neck. Then, he slammed the man against the wall and started pounding him with his fists. But a dying man's final struggles were not to be underestimated. Even though the man was badly wounded, Changgu was still knocked to the ground. The man grabbed his hands and pinned them down. The pen was getting dangerously close to Chang Ji's throat. Unable to resist, Changgu could only watch helplessly. Fortunately, the man lost too much blood, and collapsed just in time to save Changgu. After dealing with Deschio's first henchman, Changgu turned his attention to another target. Once again, he waited for the right moment. When his target was alone, Changgu attacked from behind. He struck with an elbow, knocking the man to the ground. He then pressed his hand firmly on the man's throat, suffocating him as the man struggled. With a snap, the man's neck was broken, and the last of Deschio's men was silenced. In a short time, 2 of Deschio's underlings had been killed. This infuriated Deschio. He immediately ordered his strongest enforcer to deal with Changgu and put an end to the problem. Soon enough, the enforcer stormed Chang Ji's cell. As soon as the enforcer entered, he launched an attack. Changgu, unprepared, took several heavy blows. Then, the enforcer slammed him into the sink. After hitting the ground, Changgu quickly found an opportunity to fight back. He grabbed a fallen object and smashed it into the enforcer's face. But just as he was about to land a fatal blow, he was struck from behind by a prison guard. Changgu was then thrown into solitary confinement. Even in solitary, Changgu didn't rest. He trained his body every day, for the fierce revenge was just beginning. A week later, solitary confinement ended. As soon as Changgu stepped out of the small cell, he quickly unscrewed a metal piece from the pipe, attached 2 screws, bent it, and held it in his hand. He fashioned a makeshift weapon. He woke up his cellmate and asked him to help trick one of Deschio's trusted men, Curly, back into the cell during yard time. Once Curly was inside, Changgu attacked him without warning. "But you just got here. 2 punches landed directly on his neck. Curly fell to the ground instantly, unable to resist. Next, Changgu used a pillow to cover his face, and began pounding it with his fists. By the time the guards discovered Curly's body, Changgu had already escaped. But even a fool would know, it was Changji's doing. This sent Deshio into a complete rage. He immediately stormed into the warden's office, demanding that the warden take action and kill Changgu. But to his surprise, the warden refused. This was because Changgu had been a police officer before his imprisonment. If he dies in my prison, it will cause unnecessary trouble. It could even jeopardize their secret lives. But Deshio didn't listen to these words at all. Seeing that the warden refused to help, Deshio decided to take matters into his own hands. One day, while Changgu was getting his food, Deshio pulled a knife from his shoe. He quietly stepped closer to Changgu. Changgu quickly sensed something was off, and smartly punched a nearby guard. The purpose of this was to get the guard to arrest him, preventing Deshio from attacking. Changgu was thrown back into solitary confinement. Fortunately, a righteous guard, who had helped him before, arrived and threw him a knife for protection. After all, solitary confinement would only keep Changgu safe temporarily. Once he was out, Deshio would surely strike again. Sure enough, once Changgu was out of solitary, his cellmate delivered bad news. Deshio was preparing to gather thugs to take down Changgu. This time, Changgu decided to act first. He would cause chaos in the entire prison. Only then would he have a chance to strike at Deshio. He first lured one of Deshio's henchmen to the rooftop and launched a surprise attack. But this black brother was a skilled fighter. Changgu couldn't land a single hit. Seeing his opponent pulling out a knife, Changgu quickly grabbed a nearby rope. After 2 rounds of fighting, Changgu successfully subdued him with the rope. He then dragged Black Brother to the edge of the rooftop and tossed him off the building. With a loud thud, the prison guard was instantly killed. The prisoners who were relaxing saw this and immediately seized the dead guard's weapon. Thus, the prison riot officially began. All the prisoners went into chaos, attacking the guards. Changgu immediately locked eyes with Deshio. He charged straight at him, engaging Deshio in a one-on-one fight. Although Changgu was agile, he couldn't land any real hits on Deshio. Each punch seemed like nothing more than a tickle. He couldn't inflict any damage. Meanwhile, Deshio's punch sent Changgu to the ground instantly. Just as Changgu was about to be overwhelmed by sheer power, he finally found the right moment. With a swift move, Changgu delivered a blow to Deshio's head. Deshio immediately staggered, and Changgu took the opportunity to strike again. But before he could land another hit, Changgu was shot in the shoulder. The shooter was the warden. The warden handed the gun to Deshio, hoping Deshio would kill Changgu. But unexpectedly, Deshio, acting recklessly, shot the guard dead. Then, he kicked the warden, breaking the warden's neck. "This is my house, you've been living in." Deshio continued to fight Changgu. With his shoulder injury, Changgu was now too weak to fight back. He was helpless as Deshio pummeled him. After venting his anger, Deshio approached with a gun, planning to put Changgu out of his misery. But villains often talk too much. While Deshio was mocking Changgu, Changgu secretly drew a knife from his waist. He swiftly slashed at Deshio's neck. At last, his wife's revenge was complete. In the film's final moments, the warden was taken away for selling contraband. The righteous guard who had given Changgu the knife was promoted to the warden's position.